Have you ever had a conversation that felt light and casual, but left you wondering if there was something more behind it? Maybe you were chatting with a gentleman at the grocery store, or sharing a laugh with someone over coffee, and he said something that made your heart pause, just for a second, something like, "How are you still single?" Or, "Do you always light up a room like that?" It sounded innocent, playful even, but later, as you drove home, you couldn't help but ask yourself, was that just small talk? Or was he flirting? If you've ever felt that quiet confusion, you're not alone, because after 60, the rules of flirting change. It's no longer loud, fast, or obvious. The smiles are softer, the questions are subtler, and the signals? Well, they're often wrapped in everyday words that carry just enough curiosity to make you wonder. In this article, we're going to walk through 8 of those questions, those seemingly harmless things a man might ask when he's interested in more than just the weather. These are the kinds of questions that older men ask when they want to test the waters without making a big splash. And understanding these moments matters. Because the truth is, many connections never get off the ground. Not because the feelings weren't there, but because the signs were missed. So let's start where many of these quiet invitations begin, with a question that sounds casual but carries much more weight than most people realize. He leans in slightly, looks you in the eye with a little glint of curiosity, and says, "How are you still single?" Now, on the surface it sounds like a compliment. Kind of, but underneath, this isn't just about your relationship status. This is a man quietly wondering whether there's space in your life for someone like him. He's not asking for your full romantic history. He's not asking if you've given up on love. What he's really asking is, are you open? A lot of women, especially after 60, hear that question and smile politely. Some will laugh it off. Say something like, "Oh, I'm not sure anyone could keep up," or, "Guess I scared them all away." And that might keep the conversation moving. But it also tells him that the door's closed. Or at least, not obviously open. What he's looking for isn't just a quick answer. He's hoping for a spark. A sign that says, yes, there's still room here for something new. If you're interested, this is your moment to be real. Not rehearsed. Something like, "I just haven't met the right person. Until maybe now," is gentle, playful, and leaves the door wide open for more. Now let's say the conversation continues. You're talking about life, work, families, maybe even hobbies, and then he asks, "Do you ever get lonely?" That one can hit unexpectedly. It sounds personal, and it is, but he's not just fishing for your emotional state. What he's really asking is, are you missing the same things I'm missing? Loneliness is one of those words people often avoid, especially as they get older. But behind that word is something deeply human, a desire for connection, for companionship, for someone to talk to at the end of the day, or to sit beside in the quiet moments without needing to say anything at all. When a man asks if you get lonely, he's likely not trying to make you uncomfortable. He's revealing a little of himself. And if you're interested, it's okay to meet that honesty with your own. You might say, sometimes yes, but conversations like this help. Or maybe, I do, but I think the right company makes all the difference. That answer lets him know 2 things at once. First, that you're not made of stone. And second, that he might be the kind of company you're open to. These little exchanges, these harmless questions, are how attraction often begins at this stage in life. We're not chasing butterflies and bold declarations anymore. We're leaning into comfort, honesty, and warmth. And that's exactly what the next question often tries to gauge. Maybe you're talking about weekend plans or favorite movies, and he suddenly says, "Do you always laugh like that?" Now you might think he's just making a comment. But this is a moment. A real one. Because what he's doing is telling you, without fully saying it, that your presence has stirred something in him. That your laugh lit up the room. That something about you just shifted the air around him. It's easy to brush that off. To say, "Oh, it's just the coffee," or, "I laugh at everything," but don't. Let it land. Let it be what it is. A compliment disguised as curiosity. And if you feel the spark too, it's okay to meet it with a little light of your own. You might say, "Only when I'm having this much fun." Or, "I guess you bring it out in me." Because here's the truth. Flirting after 60 isn't about pickup lines or clever jokes. It's about presence. It's about noticing and being noticed. It's about letting someone else see the light in you, and being brave enough to shine it back. And these questions? They're invitations. Quiet ones, soft ones, but real. So next time a man leans in just a little and says something that makes you wonder, Pause before you deflect. Breathe before you brush it off. Because you might not be imagining it. You might be standing in the middle of a moment. A door half open. A chance that won't knock twice. Let's keep going. Because the next question, though it might sound like simple curiosity, is often where things start to get a little more personal. And a lot more interesting. So there you are, enjoying a little banter, maybe even starting to feel a familiar warmth you haven't felt in a long time. The conversation has a rhythm now. Light but steady. And then he asks, what kind of man do you usually go for? Now this question might sound like it belongs in a dating profile. But let me tell you, this isn't about boxes to check or a list of requirements. He's not trying to fit your type. He's trying to find out if he might already be it. At this stage in life, people don't just date for the thrill. They date for connection, for comfort, for laughter in the quiet spaces and companionship that doesn't need explaining. So when he asks what kind of man you usually go for, he's not looking for a job title or a hair color. He's asking, would someone like me even have a chance with someone like you? Here's where it gets delicate. Some women, especially those who've been on their own for a while, might respond by waving the question off. Oh, I stopped having a type years ago. Or they might list something safe like, someone kind, with a good sense of humor. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it's also a missed moment. Because if there's interest on your side too, this is your chance to send a subtle but unmistakable signal. You might say something like, I like someone who makes me feel seen. Or, someone who makes me feel like myself. These answers aren't just words, they're invitations. They don't paint a picture of a man he has to become. They offer a glimpse into how you want to feel with someone. And if he's listening, and if he's truly interested, those words will land exactly where they need to. Now picture this. The conversation shifts to past relationships, family, maybe even why certain things didn't work out. And then, almost out of nowhere, he asks, do you ever wish you had someone to come home to? It's a quiet question, a tender one, and it can catch you off guard. Not because it's shocking, but because of the way it sneaks under your guard. When a man asks this, he's not being nosy. He's opening a small door to something deeply vulnerable in himself. He's wondering if the ache he sometimes feels is also in you. He's hoping maybe that the answer is yes. That he's not alone in missing the comfort of someone turning on the light. Asking how your day went. Sharing a simple meal and a quiet evening. So how do you answer a question like that without feeling exposed? You meet it with honesty. But also grace. Some days more than others. You might say, or, the older I get, the more I appreciate the little things. Like having someone to share a cup of tea with. You're not promising anything. You're not making declarations. You're simply staying in the moment. Letting him know you feel it too. What's beautiful about these moments is that they're slow. Unrushed. Nobody's trying to impress with grand gestures or perfect lines. You're two people. A little older. A little wiser. Standing in the quiet possibility of something real. And often it's not what's said. But how it's said. The tone. The timing. The eye contact that tells the real story. And then, sometimes, he'll lower his voice just a bit and ask, would you ever consider dating someone a little older? Now this question might make you smile or raise an eyebrow, depending on who's asking, but let's read between the lines here. He's not just testing the waters of age difference. He's feeling out whether you'd be open to a connection that isn't defined by years, but by energy. A lot of women over 60 are used to men assuming they only want someone younger, or that they're not interested in romance at all. So when a man asks this, it's often less about your answer and more about his own hope. He's trying to see if maybe, just maybe, this could be something more than a nice chat in the produce aisle. How you respond sets the tone. If you're feeling the same spark, you don't have to overthink it. A simple, age doesn't matter to me as much as how someone makes me feel, says everything he needs to hear. You're not chasing. You're not performing. You're just being real. And that's more powerful than any line he could come up with. Sometimes these conversations slip into little silences. And that's okay too, because often, it's in those silences that the most important things happen. A glance held just a second longer. A smile that says more than words ever could. A soft moment where two people stop performing and just allow themselves to be seen. And then he says it. Not boldly, not dramatically, but with that gentle, uncertain curiosity. Would you ever go out with someone like me? And now we've crossed into real territory. This isn't a test. This is vulnerability. This is a man reaching out just enough to let you know he's not just making conversation anymore. He's wondering if this could be the start of something. Even something small, even just the next step. This question can freeze you if you're not ready for it. But it can also melt you if you're open to the possibility. Because what he's really saying is, I see you, I like you, and I don't want to assume anything. But I'd like to try. And in that moment, how you respond will tell him everything. You don't have to say yes. But if your heart leans forward even a little, let your answer do the same. I think I'd enjoy that. Or, that could be nice, is more than enough. It's a hand offered, not a promise, a step taken, not a leap. And sometimes, that's all it takes. Because the truth is, after 60, most of us aren't looking for fireworks. We're looking for warmth, for connection, for someone to notice the way we stir our tea or laugh a little too hard at old jokes. We're not interested in playing games. We just want something that feels honest. And these harmless questions, they're how it begins. They're not about tricks or tactics. They're about courage. They're about two people choosing to show up. Not as who they think they should be, but as who they truly are. And if you can stay in that space, open, steady, real, then maybe, just maybe, the next time someone asks, would you go out with someone like me? You'll recognize it for what it is. Not just a question, but a door, a chance, a moment. Let's keep going. By now, you've probably started to look at these simple, offhanded questions a little differently. You've seen how a man's curiosity, wrapped in something playful or casual, can actually be a quiet form of vulnerability. But here's the thing that makes it all even more real. Not every invitation comes in the form of a question. Sometimes, the strongest signals don't come with any words at all. A man might lean in just a bit when you speak, not enough to make anyone else notice, but enough that you feel it. His eyes might stay on yours during a pause, just long enough to send a message. He might mirror your movements without realizing it, folding his hands when you do, or taking a sip of his coffee right after you. And when you laugh, he might smile not just at the joke, but at the sound of your joy. These nonverbal cues aren't accidents, they're signs. Subtle ones, yes, but intentional in their own quiet way. I once heard a story about a woman named Lorraine. She was 67, smart as a whip, and had a way of telling stories that made you feel like you were sitting at the edge of a campfire. One evening, at a local book club gathering, she ended up seated beside a man named Walter. Retired architect, wore old corduroy jackets, nice eyes. They talked about novels, old jazz records, and the mystery of life after retirement. At one point, Lorraine noticed he kept glancing at her hands while she spoke. Just gentle, thoughtful glances. He wasn't fidgeting, wasn't distracted, just there, present. She said she could feel something blooming in the space between their sentences. And after a while, as the others drifted toward dessert, he simply leaned in and said, "You have a beautiful way of describing things." That's it. Not a pickup line, not a question, just a truth, shared gently. And that moment, it stayed with her, not because he said something grand, but because she felt seen, felt appreciated, felt like, just maybe, she wasn't invisible after all. That's what many older women, and men, crave. Not perfection, not passion on cue, but presence. Real, grounded, attentive presence. So when a man looks at you a little longer, lingers after a group conversation ends, or touches your arm in a way that's just barely more than friendly, pause. Don't overthink it, just notice, because those moments, that's where interest lives now. Not in loud declarations, but in warm attention. And if you're still wondering, but how do I know if he really means it? Here's the honest truth. You don't, not at first. That's the risk of connection at any age. But you can learn to trust yourself again. You can learn to feel the difference between politeness and presence. Because most of the time, your heart knows before your head catches up. Maybe he smiles when you walk into the room. Maybe he listens a little more intently when you speak. Maybe he remembers something small you mentioned the week before. Your sister's garden, your favorite bakery, the old movie you haven't seen in years. That's how you know. Not because he tells you outright, but because he shows you in the quiet, consistent ways that still matter most. And if you've ever felt like those moments passed you by, you're not alone. So many good women miss the signals. Not because they aren't paying attention, but because we've been taught not to expect them. We tell ourselves, he's just being nice, or, it's nothing, or even worse, I'm too old for this. But you're not. You're not too old to be noticed. You're not too late to be wanted. You're not too far from love to still feel its warmth on your face. One of the greatest lies aging tells us is that romance is reserved for the young. That attraction dies with our metabolism. That flirtation is foolish after a certain age. But let me tell you something important. And I want you to hear it clearly. Flirtation isn't about youth. It's about energy, aliveness, a willingness to be seen and to see others in return. When a man flirts with you, whether through a question, a compliment, or a glance, he's not saying you remind him of someone younger. He's saying you stir something in him right now. As you are, not as you used to be. And isn't that what we all want? So the next time you find yourself in one of these small, seemingly insignificant moments, whether it's a question like, "Would you ever date someone like me?" or a quiet touch on your shoulder as he says goodbye, stay in it. Don't retreat. Don't overanalyze. Just let yourself feel what it feels like to be desired, to be noticed, to be seen. You don't need to do anything you're not ready for. But you do deserve to stand fully in your own presence and to receive genuine interest when it comes your way. Because here's the truth. You don't need to chase. You don't need to perform. You don't need to become someone new. You've already lived enough life to know what matters. What you need now is to trust that you are still worthy of connection, still magnetic, still interesting, still radiant in your own way. And when a man shows up with that quiet, respectful curiosity, you don't have to leap. You just have to meet him halfway. With grace, with openness, with that beautiful, calm confidence that only comes from a woman who knows who she is and what she's worth. If this video spoke to something inside you, I want to encourage you to share it with a friend, someone who might need this reminder too. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever missed a moment only to realize later what it really meant? And if you want more videos like this, conversations that honor your strength, your story, and your spirit, hit the like button. Subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. And ring that little bell so you never miss a thing. Because the best part of your story might still be ahead. The part where you realize you were never invisible. You were just waiting for someone to see you. And for you to see yourself again. Here's to living your most radiant chapter yet.